and introduce what we have in terms of our 13th week, and what I am going to present right now, how is it going to work today. So here's the idea as I was describing last. Let me put this here so that I can see it. Let me again share here. But what I want is to go over what we will be doing these last 4 classes. So today, Thursday, and next class. We're going to pick a topic. And from that topic, you are going to be using tools from the course. You will be doing that in a breakout room in a few of you. I will assign you randomly in a few minutes. And I will do that after I explain some of the issues. So for this particular case, what we're going to be working is on climate change and energy use, which in fact, some of you are working in one way or another for your final term paper. And so I will make a short presentation of some of the issues. And then you will be assigned to groups, and you will go back to your notes, to your notebook of what you have, and you will work in groups for a period of time, probably half an hour, and then you will report back to the class. And what I will do is that I will set up Padlets for each of the groups that I will tell you in a second which ones are those going to be, so that each group is going to take a particular approach or a particular model, graphical model, to address a particular question that I am going to present in a second. And so with that in mind, the idea is to talk about climate change as one of the biggest challenges we have today, and particularly with respect to energy use. And you will have time to discuss among yourselves on these issues, and these are the issues in particular. So maybe let me see if I can put this in bigger screen. Yeah, that's better. Here. So right after I present some of the general issues for the case of climate change and the energy problem, I will form these 2, 4, 6 groups among you. So if we have 18 people, it's going to be 3 people per group. And each group will have assigned each of these different specific tasks, okay? So as you will see, as I go from A through F, you will see the major approaches that we have been taking in the course. So in a sense, this is like a review of what we have been doing so far, but you are going to be applying it to specific issues. And we will be doing this again on Thursday for another topic. And we will be doing that again 1 week from today, and then the following Thursday for another major topic. So this case today is about climate change and energy use in particular. So group A is going to use the metaphor of planet Earth, the spaceship from Boulding. This was the very first part of the course. And in particular, this idea of the economy being embedded within the biosphere, and how energy use and how the capitalist revolution and the history of the planet, and in particular the last 200 years, have created the conditions for maybe reaching or even overstepping on the boundaries that the earth is capable of sustaining for the economy. So you will be putting this argument with particular focus on the issue of energy, the energy problem, and how that affects climate change. And I will introduce a few elements in a second for that. The second group will be using game theory, a basic payoffs matrix, whichever you want to discuss among the three of you, and try to illustrate with an example how that game theory approach would be useful to address the issues of energy and climate change. So you may remember that we did with game theory different examples. The examples of Anil and Bala deciding whether to plant cassava or rice, but then the game theory model to explain how Anil and Bala needed to decide over using a particular pest control between a pesticide or an integrated pest management technique. So now you're going to think of a simple payoffs matrix that addresses the issue of energy and climate change and apply it to that. Again, some of you are already thinking of this because for the last two essays, you use that to analyze your particular problem, and some of you are already thinking about energy and or the issue of climate change. So that's one more possibility that in your group there might be someone who has done this anyway. Group C is going to think about this idea of the unearthed human, if you remember that, and how to apply different models of rationality to the problem of climate change and energy. And how would that apply to this particular challenge is what you're going to be doing in this group. Group D is going to discuss the issue of fairness, the Pareto criteria, and the problems of justice, including the Rawlsian model of the veil of ignorance, applied to the ethical dimensions of climate change and energy. So that's going through the different modules or sections that we have been covering in the course. Then group E is going to be analyzing this problem of climate change using the model of externalities. So if you remember, we had this model of the banana growers and the fishermen, and the pesticide, this Weevil-kill pesticide that was harming the fishermen, and then the problems of negotiation between the fishers and the banana planters, growers. So you are going to be using that model applied to a problem of energy and climate change. For example, we talked about this previously with other cases in which the activity is not anymore, and you did this for SA2, by the way, and those of you who did it for the climate change or for the energy problem, it's going to be much easier to do. When we discussed the case of this island last week that I shared with you, this small island in the Caribbean that was severely affected by a huge hurricane and that wiped out the island, and that was caused by somebody else. The problem is that somebody else is someone very general. We cannot blame one particular country or one particular action to the accumulation of issues that increase the change in the probabilities of having hurricanes category 5 like that one. And finally, group F is going to explain one of these issues of climate change and energy, but using the other model that we had, which is the model of this company and the citizens and employees, I'm sorry, let me correct that here, the citizens and the workers and or employees who have conflicting interests between a good environment, an environment of good quality, but also the possibility of having a job and wages from that work. So to do this, I am going to be, when I assign you to these groups and you go and work in these small groups, I am going to be doing the following. If you, and you will be using this as a, let's call it like a cheat sheet for you. If you go to Moodle right now, and here I am showing you the Moodle page, and you go to this last section, which is the great challenges and possible solutions. Here, you will find here a PDF, and I am opening that PDF right now, and it's supposed to open here. So I'm going to share it with you right here. And in this PDF, what you will find is 30 slides of all the things that we have been doing, like in a nutshell in the course. So you will start here with the general issue of the global markets. This is for the first group. In terms of the climate change model and the, not the climate change model, the market model that we had on the cars market and the problems of climate change and the accounting we did of the economic losses for all of you from the costs from adaptation and mitigation. And then the spaceship Earth idea with this model of the economy embedded in the biosphere. And then as the economy grows, as you can see here in the bottom right, the economy box is pushing over the limits of the biosphere to sustain economic life and the economic system. So the idea is to see this focusing on the particular problem of energy. And then we jump to micro. So this group that is going to be doing micro can have these guidelines of the different games that we had. But in this case, this is not anymore about planting cassava or rice or about pest control in the right-hand side, but it's going to be about energy use, energy technologies, mitigation regarding energy and climate change, you name it. And we saw a lot of that at some point in the course. But also for the rationality model, which is the following group, we talked about this idea that depending on the indifference curves and the preferences of people towards others, because people are altruistic towards others or altruistic towards future generations, then we could use that idea of this pro-social behavior that you read in chapter 4, and the idea of altruism, how is altruism model here, and therefore come to this idea of the inert human that can be applied to this challenge of solving the climate change and particularly the energy problem that we face. And that this is the logic that we covered in class on how this inert human is co-evolving with the environment and the institutional environment back and forth, and how would that apply to the problem of energy and climate change, and with the implications that we discussed. Then we had this framework, which in general applies to everyone, but in particular to the next group, who is going to be working on the issues of fairness, power, and distribution and justice, because in this particular model, you may remember how the institutions allocate power, and that power, bargaining power and the reservation option, determine how the possibilities, the opportunities, and the outcomes are allocated across society. So you may want to use this to apply to the particular problem of climate change and energy. And then with this idea of the Pareto criterion, with the problems that we discussed and the application for different issues, but also the other approaches to justice and fairness, including again Pareto and then John Rawls, and the idea of the veil of ignorance could be applied to this problem of climate change and climate change and energy use. So that's for that group. And then sort of coming down to how we evaluate, or we can evaluate in economic terms, not only how efficient is a particular allocation, but also how fair that allocation is. And then you would be able to say something or try to compile some ideas on how does that apply to the problems of energy and climate. We then cover the model of externalities. If you remember from this particular model of the banana growers, and then the three important curves, the marginal private costs, and the marginal external costs, and the marginal social costs, how modeling with this particular approach in this graph, one could analyze where is the optimal level of production. In the case of energy, it's not going to be bananas. In the case of energy, it could be the production of energy, let's say energy based on renewable sources, wind energy, solar energy, or fossil fuel based energy, and how this model could apply to that. And again, some of you did that in SA2, by the way. So the bargaining between banana growers and fishers may be applicable to a new setting that you are going to discuss and decide for this case. And then we will be able to see where are the externalities, who makes that decision, who affects who, what are those costs and benefits, which is the market failure, and what are possible remedies or policies that can be applied to solve that particular problem. So you will have that as a list of possibilities to sort of summarize what you see there in the screen, but in terms of particularly the issue of what kind of energy should be the different countries and the planet as a whole be using for a more sustainable future. For the case of abatement costs and policies, you have this idea of different technologies to abate climate change. And I didn't assign this to a group because we already did that in class for that particular case. So you may remember here, these are all different abatement technologies that are net positive or net negative, but some are cheaper than others. But we did that. And we covered that with this particular diagram, because here the emissions of CO2 and the abatement costs of applying to different changes in technologies could abate the accumulation of CO2 in the atmosphere. So in a sense, we already did that as a whole in previous classes. And then we applied this particular problem, which now could be used for all these different global challenges and the particular challenge of climate change and energy. In terms of the preferences, if you remember here, the indifference curves for the policymaker and the preferences that the policymaker has over different levels of environmental quality, but also different levels of consumption or production of goods and services that society consumes and needs to satisfy its needs. And finally, this bargaining model that we did regarding this single company with the Brownsville history, the Brownsville story, inspired also in this Italian Taranto city, in which this business is the provider of jobs, but is also harming the environment, and the citizens have preferences for wages and jobs, but also preferences for the environment. And then there is a bargaining possibility there with these curves that we did in class. And the idea here is not anymore about the company polluting the air for the citizens and the workers, but applied to energy. So it could be a power plant that produces energy and it harms other people, and these other people need the jobs, but they also are harmed by the consequences of energy production. And then you can build a story that is similar to apply this particular model to that. And that's the last one there. So again, if I come back to our list, where is it? I lost my list here. If we come back to this list, you will be assigned to one of these 6 groups. You will be working in parallel today. I will send you a Padlet link to each group, a different Padlet to each group, and you will be working with the Padlet as a way of having a board that you all share, and you insert your comments, your ideas, your pictures, whatever you want, and then you can build a story to respond to this particular task that you're seeing there in the screen, okay? And then at the end of the class, we should be able to have these 6 Padlets composed by the contributions of each of you, and then I will be able to see how you build a story among the three of you. So to me, the main suggestion is that once you sit in your breakout room with your other two students in the group, begin discussing the task for your group, go back to your notes, go back to this PDF file that I uploaded in Moodle that you can find in that last section, have that all in hand, and have some first 5-7 minutes of brainstorming on how do you see this particular task that you were assigned apply to that particular problem of climate change and energy, and use all that you have from the course in the past and begin to build a narrative of how you would express that problem using this particular approach that you have in the challenge that was assigned to your particular group. And then I will be able to use those Padlets to see how you were able to contribute individually and collectively, and that will give me an idea of how you came up with that. And depending on how much time we have at the end of the class, we will be able to review the Padlets all together and share them and see what kind of stories are there. So feel free to copy the screenshots of these models, try to scratch on them, to write something, to rewrite what you mean in the different axes of the diagrams or the different labels of the graphs, and come up with a story that it's relevant and useful to apply these tools to the problem. It doesn't have to always be reflected in a graph or in a diagram. It could be a narrative of writing that tells the story and relates to that, but definitely one that responds to this, okay? And I am going to, let me see, how can I do this so that you can have the task for each of the groups, so that you can start working once you go to the breakout rooms. But maybe, let me see. Let me think here for a second. Maybe what I can do is that I can print this and send it to, yeah, maybe that's the best way. I can print this and let me put it this way. This is groups, tasks, and today is April 27. And I am going to upload this also here in Moodle. So let me go once again here, add an activity, and then upload this file quickly. Now the problem is to find a way to upload this quickly. Whoop, here, I think it's here. Group tasks, yes, here. So think about the questions that you have for what you're about to start doing. And group tasks session April 27 session, climate change and energy. Okay. And I'm going to save and display. So you should be able to see it now. So yeah, it is there. So you can upload, you can download the PDF now from Moodle. You should be able to see it. If you don't find it, let me know. Okay. So the quick introduction that I had for you regarding climate change is here, and it follows like this. And this is just to give you quick ideas for those of you who are going to be assigned to this group. So you may remember that we went through the hockey stick model. back in the introduction of the course. And that hockey stick showing how over the 800 years, since the year 1000 all the way to the 1700s, nothing much was happening regarding temperatures on Earth or emissions of CO2. And then after the, as you can see there, after the 1700s, the Industrial Revolution began to create an increase in accumulation, in the accumulation of CO2 in the atmosphere. So that's the blue line, CO2 parts per million in the atmosphere. But also that was accompanied by a change in the variability of temperatures over these 200 years. And that has created this particular problem of climate variability, increases in defrosting of the poles, North Pole and the South Pole, but the Arctic especially. And we sort of use this idea of the bathtub model to think about what are the sources of the concentration of CO2. So this story, this particular story, which is the actual data from Earth, and this particular metaphor to analyze that has a particular component with energy use, right? So a component of CO2 has to do, for example, with burning carbon. It also has to do with deforestation and forest fires, but in particular with producing energy. So how is energy related to that, right? In particular, probably the absorption of CO2 and the natural decay of CO2 doesn't have much of a relationship with energy. But still, energy has to do with a major contribution, energy production and consumption, for moving our cars, heating our homes, lighting. Even now, you probably have heard that cryptocurrencies are one of the biggest energy consumers in the world right now. So Bitcoin's footprint in terms of CO2 is huge right now. All the servers and the consumption of energy to run the computers that are needed to make cryptocurrencies work is one of the major polluters, major emitters of CO2 because of the energy consumption that it requires. So these kind of things are relevant here to understand that. Interestingly, about the capacity to absorb CO2, I just saw recently that in Norway, they are developing a technique to store carbon, CO2, to pump CO2 back to the bottom of the ocean and create huge storages of CO2 in the bottom of the ocean. And I just saw that as a technology that apparently is being tested and apparently successful. I don't know the details because this is rather new, but it's a way of trying to deal, because you know Norway's economy was grown out of the energy sector. Norway, for a good part of their recent history of industrialization and growth, was based on fossil fuels, basically on extracting oil for the most part. Anyway, so this is this idea of thinking about, particularly with climate change and the role of the energy sector. We did our experiment with the cars market, and you may remember, this is in your class notes, you may remember that we did the accounting, particularly with these gray bars, of how much of the net gains that the market was producing, how much of that had to be discounted if we accounted for the costs of mitigation and adaptation. So that particular market for cars included a component of energy to produce the cars, energy to make the cars run, and therefore energy was a major player in this story that we had in the market for cars in terms of the supply and demand and the market equilibrium, but also on the external costs that you had to pay all out of your pockets, and then how there were these net social losses here at the end that we accounted for once we calculated how much was the cost per country here, and therefore the social planetary costs to all countries, namely all of you who were playing in the game, and therefore the net social losses who are represented in these 3 bars in those 3 rounds of the game. So we have that. And with that, you may remember that we played a particular experiment in which you had 10 tokens that you could invest or keep. And depending on the tokens that you invested or kept, you would make different earnings. And at the end, you may remember that we ended up in a typical problem of public goods, which over rounds decrease the contributions of you guys to the common fund in this particular game. And here we saw the distribution of some of you who were contributing little or nothing or halfway or all the way with a lot of tokens. And we did some parallels in class, if you remember, on how that would apply to the problem of climate change and contributing to the common good, whether the contributions to this fund would be represented as contributions by countries in making the transition to renewable energy. That would be a good metaphor or parallel in which each of these tokens represented as an investment in renewable energy, in transitioning from polluting energy towards clean energy, would be a way of investing in the common good, but yet you could free ride on the other countries doing that contribution, and therefore you would be making even more earnings. But if that follows as a strategy for everyone else, we end up with a decrease in the contributions to the common good, and then we end up trapped in a bad equilibrium in which nobody addresses the aggregate collective challenge of, in this case, transitioning in energy towards a more sustainable model of the economy. So you may remember that we did that in an experiment in class, and you may use this logic to do that in your particular case. So climate change as a public goods problem has to do with these contributions to the public good, as I was saying, in terms of switching to clean energy, in terms of switching to electric transportation, electric cars, electric bicycles, electric motorbikes, and the like, and electric buses, electric subways, and also other ways of dealing with the energy problem, particularly with respect to carbon-based energy plants, coal-based mostly, as examples of ways of contributing to the public good. So that's that quick brief introduction that again you all have in your notes. So that will mean that we will have these 6 groups here. So if I am going to open up for questions, and otherwise I will send you to your rooms and you will be assigned randomly. Zoom does that randomly, and then you will take on your particular task. So depending on the group that you get assigned, you will see which of these tasks you are assigned to. You will start brainstorming. You will start filling inputs, ideas, brainstorming ideas in this Padlet, and then you will try to organize the Padlet by moving the boxes, connecting them with arrows, etc. And therefore you will be able to tackle this for the following half an hour. That's my plan. So are there any questions on what is right now? Any question? Okay. Catherine was asking about the essays, the gradings. I started already sending some of those, and I haven't finished. It's taking me some time to do that, and I apologize. I'm being very slow on that. But I will be sending them by the end of today, a few more, and tomorrow I have more time to work on that. And for the final paper, we need to decide on the date. I don't know. I don't mind about the date that you have to turn this in, as long as it gives me time to read them and grade them before I have to submit grades. Anyone has an idea of what are the the key dates for turning in grades here? In this case, do you guys know when is the last time that I have for submitting grades? From the calendar from your side, do you know? Anyone? No? Because I don't know. And you probably should have calendar. Let me see if I can find something here. Calendar, register, spring 2021. Okay, so I'm watching here. Maybe if you watch with me, you can help me out here. So I know Tuesday, May the 4th is your last day to choose for a pass-fail grade instead of a letter grade. You guys know that, right? So you're aware of that May 4th date, correct? Okay. Last day of classes is that same day. Final examination begins May 6th. Last day of final examination semester ends May 12th. Final grades due by midnight, May 17th. Okay, so this is useful. So I would say that if we use the last day of final examination, May 12th, as the final day for you to submit your papers, would that be okay with you guys? Is anyone conflicted by that? Should we say May 12th for your papers to be in? Should I assume this silence as a yes?
Yeah,
yes. Yeah, that works.
Okay, so if no one has any difficulty in May 12th for turning in your final paper, then that should give us some guideline on what it's ahead. Okay. So Catherine was writing May 18th. So probably for May 18th, did you mean, Catherine, the final grades due? No, but May 17th is the final grades due. Okay, and for the guide, okay. Okay, so I'm just using here the official webpage for UMass in the registrar's office. So May 12th will be the final date for you to turn in your final papers. And I will send the terms of that paper, the details of what I am expecting and the rubric, probably by, so we should have it by next class so that you have seen it by Thursday and clarify any questions in that regard, okay? Okay, so it means like we have those 30 minutes remaining of class to send you to the final groups. So let's see if I can put this into place now. You should have all your inputs and you will begin brainstorming, and then I will send the Padlet link to each of your breakout rooms. And I think I can do that through the chat room on each of the breakout rooms. So let's see, breakout rooms, and I'm going to create 6 rooms, and you're going to be randomly sent there. So I'm going to call this room A, room B, room C, and I will read room D. Okay, no, it's working. Everyone seems to be that it's going to be assigned, and room E, F is the last one. Okay, so we have now the 6 rooms you will be sent there and you will start working, and you already have the particular task for your room because I uploaded that in Moodle. Okay, so the three of you and yeah, it's basically three people, exactly three people per group. You will be working there. Stay alert on the broadcast messages that I send to all groups, and I will be coming to each of your groups to make sure that you are being able to work, and that if you have questions, I can try to solve them. Okay, so I'm going to send you now, and this will be for the next 25 minutes, and see how that goes. Okay, so go ahead. You should be going to the rooms now. And I will be getting the Padlets ready. Okay, so you are coming back. Some people are, I think we have everyone here again. Great. Okay, so I am seeing here the different Padlets, and just to give you a glimpse of without much detail, let me show you. Where is it? Here. You can see here what is happening. Group A, Group B, Group C, Group D, E, and F. Okay, so the idea is the following. I want you to keep those links with you and think about, from what you discussed, what else can you add to the Padlet? So the Padlets will be open until next class on Thursday, okay? And I will close before class these Padlets and I will keep them. And I have your names here because Zoom, when assigning the names, I know who was where, because I can see here that I do not necessarily know who wrote what, which is fine, don't worry. But to me, it's the collective construction that you are doing with your Padlets that I am interested. And I'm going to use this also as a criteria to get an idea of how you guys are incorporating and assimilating all these tools and being able to apply them correctly. So think of this like a group assignment, like a kind of group quiz or the like. And we will be using this also as a group evaluation and give some extra points to those of you in that particular group based on the quality of what you presented. So last minute, the instruction is the following. The Padlets will continue to be open. You will be able, the three of you in your group, you will be able to polish, add, improve, whatever you see there is going to be a collective product of the three of you. And I will close that on Thursday before class, and we will save that as a first exercise of this. Then on Thursday, we are going to be doing exactly the same, but for another of these global challenges, which has to do with biodiversity and deforestation, which again, for some of you is going to be even easier because some of you are working on that for your particular term papers. So that's it. That's the idea. Keep working on your Padlets on your spare time from here until Thursday, because I know the time was tight today because I had to give all these instructions, but it's to give you an extra time to improve what you're putting there. So I will be checking on those Padlets. If I have comments, I may insert some comments or clarifications, and whenever you have time, keep contributing to that. And think of this as closing, as similar to the problem of the public goods that I told you. You have tokens to keep or tokens to invest. Every token you keep gives you some benefit, but also every token that you invest in the group gives benefits to you and the others. but it's going to be a prisoner's dilemma in the sense that you can either choose to free ride on the efforts of the other two people or contribute and enhance the contributions of the two other people. So in a sense, this that you're doing is in itself one more classroom experiment of the problem of cooperation among team members to produce something that is collectively useful for you in that particular group and for the entire class when I share all the 6 Padlets with everyone, okay? So thank you very much for coming. See you guys on Thursday. And I will be sending more information to Moodle as we go. So bye guys, see you.
Keep it, Professor.
Okay, Crystal, did you have a question?
This is Jesse.
Wait, Crystal had her hand up. So go ahead, Crystal.
Well, are these going to be graded like?
Brother Jesse.
Yeah, I want to, let me mute Jesse here. Okay, yes, I want to grade these to give extra points to the participants of that particular group.
So
I mean,
what do you mean by extra?
This is to add up. This is not going to lower the current grades you have. This is to enhance what you guys have.
Okay, and are we going to be in the same groups for all of the?
No, because I'm going to randomize this in every session so that you get the chance to talk about different approaches for different topics with different people. So I'm going to randomize it, okay? Yep. Okay, so I'll see you on Thursday. Jesse, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was supposed to take the first 2 questions of my quiz.
You stick around.
Yeah.
Harrison, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. I have 2 questions.
Go ahead.
One's regarding the second essay and one's regarding the final essay.
Yeah.
Did you say at any point during class, I know it was the final essay was touched upon, but did you specify any day that we're going to be getting like a specific rubric and prompt for it?
Yes,
do you know?
Before Thursday, you should have it for the final essay.
Awesome. And also, are the second essay grades going to be coming out soon?
It's coming out soon. And if I remember, Harrison, yours was almost ready. So maybe by the end of today, I'll try to send you yours.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Professor.
Sure.
See you on Thursday.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay, Jesse. So here's the deal. Since we were talking about the first 2 questions, so I'm going to open up here the quiz, and I'm going to ask you about those 2 questions, different questions, okay?
Yeah.
So this is how, so that we can feel, because I never got your answers for those 2 questions. And quiz number 3, where is it? Quiz number 3, answers, here it is. Okay. So what we're going to be doing is the following is question 1 and question 2. So I'm going to show you the same question. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's question 1. There you have it. And we know that the answer 2 was the correct answer. Okay. Now I want you to answer to me why 1 is not correct.
Because that's more focused on the company rather than society, and the abatement cost has more to do about society than the companies or the larger person who's causing the externalities.
I missed that, but the sound is not clear. Can you repeat that again? And by the way, let me stop the recording here. We don't need to record the rest of the pause recording.